You know, I've been thinking a lot about language lately. The language of our movement, and the language of our families. And one phrase has resonated very deeply for me these last few weeks. Free to believe. 2 weeks ago, I was standing outside the Supreme Court with some of our staff and many of our volunteers and our partners. And I saw the phrase on a balloon in the anti-family rally, free to believe. It was only 20 feet away, and yet it was like looking through a portal to the past. Now, on our end, our speakers spoke of saving lives. They talked about protecting children and families. They talked about ending racism. And they talked about raising up the voices of our trans community. But on their side, they spoke of keeping the debate going, as though our gender and sexuality, as though our families and our children were up for debate, as though those are things that are anything but our very being. As they shifted between their camp and ours, watching our Kinsey, our beautiful Kinsey, stand up and bravely raise her voice, talking of her faith to a roaring crowd. And our opponents bemoaning the threat that somehow Dylan and I and our son pose to their families. My own excitement over the historic day suddenly left me. The words they were using were meant to divide. They were meant to isolate and to limit. While we used words to bring people together, to preach love, to bring Baltimore closer even as we stood 40 miles away. Now, a few weeks ago, I had the pleasure of doing some of our work on the ground. I traveled to Indiana with our Midwest regional manager and the chair of our Midwest Advisory Council. I pulled up to a catering hall in Lafayette. The sticker on the door told me I was safe here, and it had to because there are places in Lafayette where I am not safe. The room was packed. Kids were on laps or squirming in their own seats. Their parents telling stories. The faces we saw and the stories they told, they haunt me still. Because they were stories of fear, not because of a law that had passed or what it said now, but because a law that could be used to divide us could ever have been introduced in the first place, could ever have been introduced and could ever have been passed, because that was their reality. And all supposedly in the name of faith. Faith, it has played such a strong role in our movement, and most well known as the supposed birthplace of vitriol and bigotry, of fear and of hate, for people like you and people like me. In that camp, just 20 feet away, they wielded faith like a sword to cut us down, to separate us, to put our children at risk. But there in front of the court, we stood tall, and our pro-family agenda brought us each back to how we support all families. It brought us back to the pain in Baltimore, and Ferguson, and Brooklyn, to Indiana and Arkansas, to Kentucky and to Texas. And it brought us back to what we really wanted, to creating a country safe no matter the color of your skin, or your gender, or your sexuality, or that of your parents. They brought us back to the truth about working families and what it means to work together. And they brought us back to faith. Now, we sometimes forget that faith is also the place where so many of us have found strength and sense in the world. Where so many of us found hope, support, and a place to mourn our loved ones. And as a generation was ravaged by AIDS, our faith communities buried us. They held our hands. They mourned with our families. And when we saw hope in having families, when we came out, our faith communities like Bill's CBST, became our centers. For us, faith is not a sword. For us, it is a shelter. And we too demand the freedom to believe. We demand the freedom to believe in justice. The freedom to believe that our children will be safe, that our families will be respected, that our stories will be heard. That we are free to believe and free not to believe. Free to reject faith without fear of persecution and without our families suffering. We believe that every child should be protected by a legal relationship with their parents. We believe that every family should be able to send their children to a safe school no matter where they live. That every parent should be able to provide for their family without fear that coming out at work could cost them their job. And that no parent should have to choose between putting food on the table and caring for their loved ones. But we also believe that homophobia and racism are real, and that our families, the most diverse population in the country, should be able to raise their children in a world free of both. We believe in a beautiful and expansive definition of family. An America and a movement that understands that we each have a role to play, whether we have faith or not. Whether in a church, or a synagogue, or on the streets, or in front of the Supreme Court of the United States. And that is the heart of our work together. That is what you in this room have made possible. A vision coupled with action. Allowing us to set a new agenda where family values means valuing families. Now, watching our rally and theirs, I found hope in knowing that we are not stopping with marriage. And that we are not just dreaming, but we are taking action, real action. Action rooted in this organization's commitment to a movement of families and communities that are empowered. Like our legal clinic project, which you in this room made a reality last year. We launched it since last time we were here in Mississippi. And this year we're bringing it to Alabama, and we have our sights set on Louisiana next. I took solace that day, standing on those steps, knowing that together we have changed the lives of families who may never know that we even exist, but who can now access federal financial aid and Social Security cards and veterans benefits. And knowing that our work to change forms was re-educating America in the language of families. Knowing that we, this year, are launching a brand new act that will enable each and every one of us to change the forms that we encounter every day. We stood there in front of the Supreme Court not knowing for sure what was going on inside and what they would be saying to us. But we stood, families across the country, shoulder to shoulder, knowing that while we faced different barriers, that we were there together. And to ensure that we kept this work going, Family Equality Council has committed to hosting this June the very first stakeholder summit on Southern LGBTQ families. This work represents a strategic vision that believes that community engagement, public education, and policy and advocacy must go together to achieve long-term social change. And from the podium, we were told stories, lots of stories, stories that change hearts and minds and lives, stories that we knew the court was hearing and our voices breathed. And while our opponents put us down, we know that their youth are looking to us. That their youth, knowing that they could get kicked out of their own homes, may need a home. And we need them to know that they're not alone. So this summer, Family Equality Council, in partnership with the It Gets Better Project, will be launching Our Families in the South, a groundbreaking initiative to tell the stories of real families in the South, where a full third of LGBTQ families live, and live with the fewest legal protections in the country. Mothers and fathers, children, college students, grandparents. We believe that change happens when people come together and they are empowered, when they are given the tools and resources they need to make a difference in the world, the encouragement to do so and the support when it's hard. And that's why I'm very proud to share that this organization, our National Board of Directors, and our staff is committed to a substantial goal of increasing volunteer opportunities and leadership training across the country. This year alone, we plan to establish 150 leadership opportunities so that parents and children can stand up for themselves. Because I, as a white man in New York, don't know what a lesbian in Kentucky means. All I can do is support her with my full heart. And these people, they are our true leaders. They may not all be in the history books, although you can bet some of them will make it there. But they're the ones on the front lines, holding hands, building community, fixing legislation, and urging our elected officials to do the right thing. Our staff and volunteers walk that cause. We sing songs. We offer a helping hand. And these are the people, some of them around you, who wake up every day and plow forward in a movement far more complex and far more intense than most will ever know. But the reality is this: our equality is not an imminent inevitability. But we do have faith. We have faith that we can make it so. It is lifetimes of work. Lifetimes of work to create a country that values families and children. That doesn't just bar discrimination, but values our differences. This is the work that makes Leo in Indiana believe that he can grow up to be president. And his two moms, too. We are free to believe. And I believe in us. I believe in us, and I believe in the power of coming together. I believe in an expansive and celebratory definition of family that supports all. Now, be sure, there is in this country an anti-family movement. They were a mere 20 feet away from us. They were a mere 20 feet away in front of the Supreme Court, fighting to take us down. I heard words from that camp. They called us radical. They say that we have an agenda. And so I say that. Absolutely. We have an agenda. It is an agenda of love, and it is justice, and it is family, and it is equality for all. And if that is radical, then call me a rebel. Thank you all for your support.